and welcome to Educated STEM. I'm Kate, the founder of Educated STEM, and today I thought we would discuss your graduate school interviews. So I have released previous videos talking about how to apply to graduate school, so presumably you have followed that advice and you have been invited to interview. Congratulations, that's wonderful news. But what do you do next? Hopefully you realise you need to do some more researching. So as the name suggests, research, you're going to repeat your searches. And so hopefully if you want to go to graduate school, you like that sort of thing. Otherwise, you're not going to enjoy your graduate school experiences. So first of all, you've been invited to interview by some sort of administrator at the school. You need to respond to that message as promptly as possible to confirm that you are interested in the interview process. And they will note how quickly you respond, because if it takes days for you to respond, they will get the impression that you are not as interested in your application to that school as you might otherwise have been. So if you don't want to give them that perception, respond quickly. And yes, in this year, you're probably going to have virtual interviews thanks to COVID. But in other years, you are likely going to be invited to campus for an on-site interview. And therefore, they're going to want to arrange your transportation. So whether that's a flight or whether you're going to get yourself there by driving and then a hotel accommodation. So really, you need to respond relatively quickly, especially if you're getting a flight, because if it takes you a few days to respond, then your flight might have sold out and it might therefore be a great inconvenience for you to take a different flight, or you may no longer be able to get there at all. So respond quickly. The next thing to do is, hopefully you're being invited to interview at multiple schools. That would be wonderful. But they might actually overlap their interview days. So I would like you to go ahead and make a list and a schedule of all of the schools that you're being interviewed for, maybe even the ones that you applied for, in the hopes that they get back to you, and write down when their interview days were. And that will help you coordinate your interviews, because you might have accepted an interview. You could be invited to a different school on the same day. What do you do? Hopefully you choose the school that is higher up the list where you want to go. Because if you ask a school to reschedule, they may be able to do it, no big deal, or it might actually be very challenging. So if you're asking them to jump through hoops, make sure that it's probably a school that is lower down your list, because you're going to irk an administrator most likely. If a school isn't willing to accommodate your request, that might be a sign that you're not a top candidate. So that might also give you an indication where you are in the hierarchy. At this point, they've probably ranked all of the candidates. So they know who the top ones are and who the lower choices that they're interested in are. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to revisit the school's website and make notes of all of the key facts. This is going to help you decide what questions that you should ask them when you go to interview, but it will also allow them to know whether you've done your homework. So one of the first questions that you would expect to be asked potentially is, what do you know about this school, the program, or the person who's interviewing you? So you really want to be prepared just in case they ask you that. You also need to prepare some standard responses to some fairly obvious questions. You also need to think about talking about your previous research experience. That is obviously going to come up at some point. So if you haven't practiced that answer, you might not come across as authentic. So top tip, you might want to practice your interview questions with either a mentor, a colleague, or a peer, maybe someone who's already gone through the interview process, just so you can get an idea of the sort of questions that you might be asked, and also so you can practice your responses. They can tell you if your enthusiasm for the program is coming across, because when you get to the interview, you need to explain and show and demonstrate to your interviewers that you really want to go to that program. You really want to be a top candidate there. So when you're talking about your previous research experience, don't assume that your interviewer knows the field that you're talking about. So if you're going to, say, a biochemistry interview, Yes, the person interviewing you might be a biochemist, but they might be studying a completely different esoteric thing over here than what you have actually researched. So it's always good to have props with you. So take a diagram of the pathway or the process that you are researching, and also take some figures which show the results that you've received. So you can kind of tell them a little story. This is what I'm researching, this is why, this is the problem, and this is how I tackled that. These are the experiments I performed, and these are my results. So make sure, even if it's a virtual interview, that you have something that you can show, because if you're on a Zoom call, you can always just take an image like this and show them what you're talking about, just so that they know and that they can help understand. So hopefully you've been sent an agenda, so you know who is going to be interviewing you when and who you're going to be meeting. You need to go to the websites of these individuals and really go over them. So we're talking about, have they recently published? Have they recently got funding? What do they research? One of the key things, they might want to talk to you about their research so they can gauge your interest. But also you need to be able to ask them questions back. And if you haven't done any homework on it at all, then unless you're really good at coming up on the spot questions, then you might mess this up. They are literally trying to gauge your interest in the program. You may also want to look at areas of common interest. So where did this individual go to school? That might give you an indication of, say you come from Colorado and they went to Colorado State. Wonderful. That is something that you can discuss and probably kind of gel on that topic, because anything that will allow you to have an easier and more comfortable conversation with your examiners or with your interviewers will definitely help. So you're looking for areas that you kind of come together. You might want to go, if you can find them, on their social media pages. So this will give you an idea of their personality and what they're like. But if you do that, and if you really feel that you're gelling with them, you probably still need to come in and be exceptionally professional. So say you're being interviewed by someone who's Dr. Gary Fields. I've just made that name up. You would not come in going, "Hey, Gary, I feel like I know you. I've seen your Twitter and your Instagram. I really love what you have to say." No. It's Dr. Fields or Professor Fields. You have to keep the level of professionalism there. And that might seem like a very obvious thing to state, but I've interviewed people and I've been asked to give someone a hug after the interview has finished, and that was just very strange and odd. And it put me in a really uncomfortable spot because I did not want to give this individual a hug, and I just thought it was really, really unprofessional. So put that into the back of your mind. You need to ensure that you always act appropriately and professionally at all times. But you need to do your research ahead of time so you know who you meet. And that can go down all the way through to the graduate students who might be showing you around as well. It can definitely help you get to know the people. So if the people that you're interested in working with are not on your agenda, it may be for a simple reason that they're not interviewing that year. Or it could be that they're off campus. They could be going to a conference or a meeting and they're unable to attend. But you ought to ask the administrator if it's possible for them to be added to your agenda. But obviously be understanding if the administrator comes back and explains, I'm terribly sorry for whatever reason, they are just unavailable at this time. If they are still on campus and unavailable to meet with you, that might either indicate that they're exceptionally busy, or it could also indicate that they're not taking students in that year, so they're not terribly interested in meeting with you. So it's something to bear in mind, something to definitely kind of think about and keep at the back of your head, at the back of your mind. So you're going to actually come up with a list of questions before you go, and I'm going to help you out. I actually have a list of questions, and I'm going to do a different video which will include all of the sorts of questions that you should ask. But you need to think of questions that you're going to be asking the professors, the administrators, and the students. And some of these questions are going to overlap because some of the answers are going to be quite different. If you're talking about how a class is received, a professor might think it's great, a graduate student might think that it is awful. and an administrator may not have an opinion because they may not have experienced that class, or they may not be able to see the student responses to the questionnaire at the end of the course. So again, you're going to ask some of these questions repetitively, but I want you to note the different answers, because it's definitely going to help you at the end of the day if you are fortunate enough to receive multiple offers. And hopefully that's what you're going to get. You're going to get inundated with these wonderful offers for all these graduate schools. And these answers are going to help you decide which one is your top choice, which one you are going to accept. So when you get to the interview, I need you to dress appropriately. Even if it's over Zoom and it's virtual, you still need to dress in a professional manner. So obviously at this time, you can see I've got a nice top on. You have no idea. I could have pajamas or shorts down here. You can't really tell. But what happens if you have to move during your interview? If something happens, you might need to stand up. So probably go the whole hog for your interview and make sure that you're dressed from top to toe. You've done your hair, you feel good about yourself. Even if you think that this is a bit silly, it definitely helps put you in the mind to focus and gets you into kind of the interview mindset. So let's make sure that you're dressed nicely. If you want to wear like a button-down shirt, that always comes across nicely, a blouse, something like that. But probably make sure that it is a toned down look. So I know I'm wearing a navy top. It might be a little too low cut for an interview. I probably wouldn't wear it for an interview. I'd probably want to make sure it comes up a little higher. But again, it's just one solid color. And I love my pinks and my yellows, but I might not wear it for an interview. So kind of, a black and maybe a white, a blue, something that's a little bit more generic. And I wouldn't wear a bold print. I've seen students come in and they're very trendy, and it hasn't gone well. They are memorable, but possibly for the wrong reason. So again, this is not the time to make a bold fashion statement unless, of course, you're willing to take that risk, at which point, go for it. But I would definitely wear something a little more conservative and definitely a solid color, or maybe a very small print. If you're going on tour and you want to wear high heels, it is definitely something to consider to take a second pair of shoes with you, because university campuses can be exceptionally big. So you probably, unless you wear high heels all the time, you probably want to switch them out, put on some flats, ask an administrator if you can store your other shoes somewhere, or take a bag and put them in there, because you do not want to end your day kind of limping along and in pain. You're going to be uncomfortable, and it's not going to leave the interview in a good memory for you. It's going to be pretty traumatic. I've seen it happen. It happens every year. So just think about it. Yes, you want to look smart, but you also want to be comfortable at the same time. So you're now in the interview. Put all that preparation that you've had to good use. So you're answering all of the questions that the different interviewers are giving you. It could be a one-person interview. Or, for my PhD, I had a panel interview. So I had 3 different people in the room asking me questions as we went, which was definitely an experience. So, hopefully that is very clear on the agenda so that you know what to expect. But know that you can't prepare for every single question. So there are going to be questions which are designed so that you have to think on the spot. And this is there so that they can see how quickly you can problem solve. And also, so they can see how you react under stress. So again, these are the standard questions. If you were a fruit, what would you be and why? I don't know. I haven't spent any time wondering what fruit I would be. Actually, that's not true. I have a great answer to that. Another one, if you could meet anyone out of history, who would it be and why? Again, hopefully if you're a STEM person, maybe you want to meet someone from a scientific or STEM field. Rosalind Franklin is a good one. I would certainly want to meet her and find out what she thought about Francis Crick and James Watson, for example. But these are the sorts of things that you do not know will come. So if that happens, keep calm. Silence is not a problem at this point. You can sit there and think for a moment before you respond, and then explain your reasoning. You can say, I would love to meet Rosalind Franklin. She's one of my personal heroes. She did amazing things. She made key discoveries when it came to different things in science. And she got treated appallingly by her boss, Maurice Wilkins, Francis Crick, and James Watson. I would love to know how she personally, felt about that. And she didn't get the Nobel Prize because she died by that point, but I would love to know what she thinks about those chaps essentially stealing some of her research and being rewarded for it. I have explained why I want to meet the person, and hopefully the examiner or the interviewer will think that my justification is valid. So this is a key thing. You do not leave an interview without asking a question. Even if you've asked someone else the question before, you can repeat that thing. You do not want to come across as someone who isn't interested in that program, in that school, in that individual. So whatever happens, ask questions before you leave. And again, I'm going to link to a second video with questions that you can ask. So after the interview, you are going to write a thank you email to everyone that you have met, so the administrators, the professors. This is a good time if you think you could have answered a question better in an interview, or if something has occurred to you that you could have mentioned afterwards, that you can pop it into that email. So upon reflection, I think that blah, 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 whatever it is, pop it in there. And I want you to send this email as quickly as possible. So even if it's not that night, the next day, because the committee might be meeting very quickly to decide who is going to get those offers. If you want to go above and beyond, write an actual thank you note. So obviously, if you're at an in-person interview, you could literally write it before you leave campus, hand it to an administrator and ask them to give them out for you. If you are on a Zoom call or something, you can physically pop it in the post, but it will take a little time to get there, at which point you may have been discussed and dismissed. So ensure that you've sent the thank you email before you get to that point. Now I'm going to mention something now which was the bane of my existence when I was in admissions. So apologies to all admissions professionals, you might not like this, but there is a website and it is thegradcafe.com. And you can go to this website, pop in the school name, and you can see if they've actually sent out offers for interviews, if they have had any interviews, and if people have received any offers or rejections. So this is very annoying as an admissions person because you may be giving out the party line. You will not be hearing from us until February. Please do not ask us before then if you are receiving an offer. But you're secretly giving out a couple of offers every few weeks because you want to lure those top candidates to you. So if you go to this website, you can see if they have given out some offers. It might not mean that you're not going to get an offer. They probably have ranked their candidates and they're giving out the top candidates that they're trying to steal from all of the competitors. You might be just underneath that. So once they've actually had all of their interview days, they may then send out another round of offers, or they might be waiting for rejections, at which point you will then get an offer. So if you see on the Grad Cafe that other people are receiving offers, don't panic. That just means that, if you get to the date where they say that you will have heard, if you haven't heard, you can email the administrator and reiterate that you're very interested in that program and ask, when you might hear something. So check it out. Don't worry if you haven't heard anything and other people have. It just might mean that for whatever reason, you are third on the list and you may still get that offer. So again, I hope that helps. Going to graduate school interviews is incredibly stressful. I definitely remember going to mine. And I will say that, looking at the people who are interviewing you and what they do is key. At one of my interviews, I was kind of told by the person, oh, I don't really know much about P53. Can you tell me what you know about it? And I knew that she was a world expert in it. That was literally what she researched. And so I don't know if it was necessarily a good thing, because, you know, my response was, well, I know that's your research area, so I will tell you what I know, and then if you can correct me and teach me a little bit more, I would appreciate it. But if I hadn't known that that was her research area, then that would have been potentially an embarrassing moment, you know, if I'd said something completely wrong. As it was, I didn't know a huge amount about it at the time, but I think it went well. So again, do your research, prepare appropriately, wear the right things. If you're in person, again, make sure that you're groomed from head to toe, you know, showered. You don't want to necessarily wear a huge amount of perfume or cologne, because some people are allergic to it. But also, if you're trapped in a room with someone for an interview, it can be quite off-putting. So again, think about these things, and hopefully if you play your cards right, you'll get an offer at the end of the day, or you know, the next day, later that week, who knows. But you want those graduate school offers so that you can then compare and contrast the schools. So I hope that helps. If you like what I'm doing, please like the video, please subscribe to the channel. And I have a blog post on this at educatedstem.com if you want to see this written out. And good luck.